People who work with government agencies like the CIA know the power of Hollywood entertainment and use it for control. Psychological operations, PSYOPs for short, have their own divisions in the U.S. military and are used by agencies to manipulate what you know.
Good evening, I'm Ron Burgundy.
Entertainment, news, and media are the front lines of the new war. A fifth-generation war of perceptions. How agencies and governments maintain power and control of you. How do I know this? I trained with the NSA in the same underground bunker in Hawaii where Snowden was. My career accelerated through a lengthy list of roles and assignments in privatized intelligence and unknown agencies. I ended up on suicide missions around the world. I was to be in Benghazi during the horrific siege. I knew the people there. I helped coordinate the logistics. But my plans changed, miraculously.
We're all hoping you'll be on your best behavior here in Pakistan.
To take down nations, you first break their elections. And if that doesn't work, agencies come in with guns blazing and allege something happened. I know, because I helped fix 45 elections around the world, most notably Ukraine. The Bush and Obama administrations intervened in elections for decades. The agencies got the work done. I got the work done. The State Department, under the guise of spreading freedom and democracy, was actually overthrowing governments through infiltration. Using PSYOPs. Acting like you were there to help, but actually rigging elections, inciting protests, riots, and at times, armed violence. But I decided to leave the power structure running the world. I'm Tori Says. I educate the people to help them take back their power. You need to understand that you've been toyed with, your psychology hacked like a computer. The agencies have done cultural infiltration of entertainment, news, and media in the United States of America. It's time you learn about these weapons of war, privatized to corporations and now being used on you. Psychological operations. Manipulating information to control you and your governments. This is a rare sneak peek behind the curtain of how governments and their intelligence agencies deceive and manipulate you. Enjoy the show. The movie you have been watching and participating in. The question you should ask is, who is running the show? Decision time. Spectator or participant? How do you wake up the population? The United States of America is a unique nation with a constitution that preserves rights for its citizens. It's we, the people, who tell the government what they can and can't do, not the other way around. This is freedom. Freedom from oppressive government. Yet its citizens have been betrayed through subversion of their constitutional rights. This change has been witnessed around the world, and citizens let it happen. The violation of our laws by the fourth unelected branch of government, not elected, but selected. Those seeking a democratic world order sought to convert a free nation into a totalitarian state. And too many in the agency apparatuses are helping. Compromised representatives make the United States look weak.
bird bath or privilege scrub. They're the two exercises we're engaged, bathing exercises we're engaged in.
We have weak leadership.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
The absurdity and stupidity is what causes you to disengage from caring about your government. This is intentional. Now imagine you're an enemy of the United States. Those who oppose free citizens. They observe and think that the people of the United States of America are stupid, weak. Therefore, it's time to attack. As warfare is evolving, let me repeat. The constitutional laws that protect the citizens of the United States have been violated. This is an act of war on the people for decades of controlled candidates in Congress and presidents who built up the agencies. The fourth, unelected branch of government. How do you destroy a tank?
This is a Russian PT-76, the current Red Army amphibious tank. You could say that it was obtained, all 15 tons of it, through intelligence channels. Or you could say we stole it. Once upon a time, spying or espionage was a fairly straightforward game. But we have come a long way rather quickly from Mata Hari. There is something new in the science of spying. It's not just stealing military hardware and secret plans, but using tanks and plans and men to promote our policies around the world and sometimes to overthrow governments we don't like. Overthrow governments we don't like.
How do you destroy a tank? You destroy a tank from the inside. To invade and destroy the United States, you must infiltrate and attack from within. What becomes of a world without the U.S. Constitution? Who is infiltrating the United States of America? To understand how, we have to go back and take a good look at our history.
We've got a revealing look inside of one of Hollywood's biggest talent agencies and some of the people who helped shape A-list careers.
They have packaged some of the most successful movies ever made, booked the world's highest-grossing concerts, and they control the profitable domain of television.
20 years ago, an industry phenomenon was formed by a band of renegade agents from the bowels of the formidable William Morris Agency.
Very few people outside of Hollywood know what CIA is, or those initials, and yet it follows us all day.
CIA, isn't that place in Langley?
No. You mean where everybody spies on each other?
It's CIA.
I really thought there were only two agencies. One was the KGB and one was the CIA.
Creative Artists Agency, better known as CAA, just finished construction on a brand new building in Century City, not far from Los Angeles, California. The building is architecturally stunning and has been hailed as a new Death Star, complete with super weapons to destroy its competition.
People love to make a big deal out of an event like this. It's the Hollywood-Washington connection, West Coast, East Coast, whatever it is. People love to make a big deal out of it. And I think it's in part because of some of the similarities between your world and the political world.
Some of you for some help with the House of Representatives because you believe in banning assault weapons.
also want to say a special word of thanks to so many of you in this audience who worked for me in the last election, who made appearances for me, who helped to raise funds and helped to make arguments, and who stood up for me in the face of pretty wilting criticism. When I was upstairs meeting some of you, it was interesting to me what was mentioned going through the line. Some people said, I'm really glad you fought so hard for NAFTA and passed it. Others said, I'm glad you're trying to get a new World Trade Agreement through GATT, but I'm glad you're fighting for the interest of the entertainment industry while you're doing it.
On behalf of Ron Meyer, Bill Haber, and the entire CAA family, it is our honor to present to you the President of the United States.
Do you think I don't know these people? I'm not looking at this from the outside. I have a lot of experience. I know she's married to a CAA agent. Do the math. Who's behind Time's Up? CAA. Where do they meet? CAA. Who needs good PR? CAA. Who are part of the pimp problem? CAA.
These are very powerful people you're talking about.
They are. So am I.
It's a commonly known fact that all technology is weaponized for war. The film projector doesn't get enough credit. Before the United States entered World War II, what was then the War Department worked with Hollywood to produce movies that promoted military action and recruitment. They won Best Picture in 1929 for Wings at the first Academy Awards. It was clear propaganda films would be a major tool in the conflict for the military.
Why are we Americans on the march? Is it because of Holland, Greece, or Russia?
During this time, Hollywood produced a number of pro-Soviet films to promote their stance against the Nazis.
If the Nazi dead had read his War and Peace, they would have known their fate beforehand.
Greetings, Commissar.
But today, we have wood. They are dead.
The Gestapo.
Yes.
And my orders?
Is to replace those agents and continue the flow of vital information.
What a girl.
It would be very nice to hear, even in Moscow.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
Almost immediately after the war, tensions flared up about communists in Hollywood. Congress immediately sought to identify them and remove their influence over films through what would be known as McCarthyism.
Americans feared red subversion. Congress revived the House Committee on Un-American Activities. In 1947, the committee investigated Hollywood, factory of America's imagination.
There has been a small group within the Screen Actors Guild which has consistently opposed the policy of the Guild board and officers or the Guild itself as evidenced by the vote on various issues. That small clique has been referred to, has been discussed as more or less following the tactics that we associate with the Communist Party.
It was, of course, a very big day in the history of Fulton, Missouri, when President Truman and Winston Churchill paid their visit.
One of the great privileges of my lifetime
to be able to present to you that great world citizen, Winston Churchill. This means a special relationship between the British Commonwealth and Empire and the United States of America.
Global governance. It's not a new concept or recent. In fact, it was when our nation was really captured with the creation of the CIA. During World War II, the need for unified intelligence operations led to the formation of the Office of Strategic Services, which was modeled after British intelligence.
It was considered to be a very sort of chic thing to do, to belong to the OSS. There were Morgans and Vanderbilts and all sorts of society names.
America's social elite and top minds were recruited, as well as burglars and conmen. As the war on communism intensified, it was clear that the Western spies and intelligence departments had fallen behind the Soviets' KGB. So the National Security Act of 1947 was signed to solidify the importance of spy work. Under the new name, the Central Intelligence Agency, better known as CIA.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
The world citizen, Winston Churchill, gave birth to the notion Iron Curtain. They used rock stars to take the enemy they created down. All scripted, all a facade. They controlled the narrative and the counter-narrative. Music is a weapon of choice. Music sets the mood. Music influences your state of being. PSYOPs.
The CIA, for 20 years until their program was discovered, were secretly promoting certain artists and intellectuals and musicians and historians and philosophers and writers in a covert way as a kind of collective cultural NATO.
The Soviets early in the Cold War years, as well as communists in other countries, mocked the United States as a cultural wasteland. They would point to Soviet art, cinema, literature, and dance as evidence of the cultural depth of the communist state. What, they asked, did the bastion of capitalism and individual freedom have to offer?
In 1967, Thomas Braden, a former CIA officer, wrote in the Saturday Evening Post, "I remember the enormous joy I got when the Boston Symphony Orchestra won more acclaim for the U.S. in Paris than John Foster Dulles or Dwight D. Eisenhower could have ever bought with 100 speeches." And then there was Encounter, the magazine published in England dedicated to the proposition that cultural achievement and political freedom were interdependent. Money for both the orchestra's tour and the magazine's publication came from the CIA, and few outside the CIA knew that. We had placed one agent in a Europe-based organization of intellectuals called Congress for Cultural Freedom. Another agent became the editor of Encounter. The agents could not only propose anti-communist programs to the official leaders of organizations, but they could also suggest ways and means to solve the inevitable budgetary problems. Why not see if the needed money could be obtained from American foundations? As the agents knew, the CIA financed foundations. And they were quite generous when it came to national interests.
In truth, since its beginning, CIA has suffered from a personality split, for in addition to intelligence, the Security Act of 1947 ordered CIA to perform other functions and duties as directed by the President and his National Security Council. And that phrase has become a sort of blank check, authorizing CIA excursions into everything from simple propaganda to the overthrow of unfriendly governments. The key to CIA's current troubles is that unique American institution, the Tax-Free Foundation.
We would go to somebody in New York who was a well-known rich person, and we would say, we want to set up a foundation, and we would tell him what we were trying to do and pledge him to secrecy, and he would say, of course, I'll do it, and then you would publish a letterhead, and his name would be on it, and it would be the foundation. It was really a pretty simple device.
In this way, the CIA set up a huge network of phony foundations. So what America got was the formation of an unofficial hidden arts council, a consortium which consisted of the cultural elite, the museum directors, the philanthropists, the urbane millionaires, the entrepreneurs, the critics, magazine editors, and CIA personnel. One of the network's leading lights was John McCloy, a former OSS agent and one of the architects of the CIA. He later had a key position on the Ford Foundation, a hugely rich charitable trust.
At the same time, McCloy is chairman of the Ford Foundation, and according to records found in the Ford Foundation's own archives, you can see that early in the 50s, the foundation was approached repeatedly by the CIA to help them provide cover for operations that they wanted to fund overseas.
Once again, the communist world holds a festival of youth, drawing thousands of visitors from both sides of the Iron Curtain.
For cultural influence operations, the CIA targeted global youth festivals, like the one in Helsinki, Finland in 1962, which was a Soviet-run festival. This is infiltration, spreading Western views through impressionable youth. Children were used, and the CIA assets like Gloria Steinem were paid to lead them.
Larry, here's the American delegation coming through. How many of these people were aware of any kind of CIA funding, of their presence?
No, none. They were all, they came because they believed that it was important to come and represent the diversity of American views at the festival, where, after all, many Asians and Africans and Latin Americans had gathered. They were never told what to say. After all, it's not very impressive or a proof of freedom to present one monolith with another, and there was no attempt to do so.
Is this your jazz group?
Yes, we encouraged them to come. I believe they had other concerts to do in Europe as well, but we asked them to come to Helsinki. There was an art exhibition there. In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA. Well, the Ford Foundation, for instance, told me that they thought we were too liberal and too controversial, and that we would endanger their cultural programs in Austria. The private individuals to whom I went often had particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
You mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group, and I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who characterized the Kennedy administration, for instance.
When we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie, it may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%. Correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence, the most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine, Kai's Beach of the Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job.
During the 20th century, Hollywood grew to be a symbol for Western culture and governance. Entertainment has always been used to capture the minds of humankind, like a siren song. Keeping people distracted. American influence through pop culture spread everywhere. While spies were being exposed, American pop culture succeeded by infiltrating a Soviet general. Yuri Zhukov had a taste for Coca-Cola. It is said that a U.S. general asked Coca-Cola to manufacture a clear version of the drink, so it would look like vodka instead of his favorite sugary beverage. At the time when the U.S. and Soviet Russia were at nuclear stalemate, Western culture spread. War shifted into covert cultural funds in order to shift the other nation's perspective on their adversaries. This is cultural infiltration.
Check this out.
On August
August 12th and 13th, East met West at Moscow's Lenin Stadium for the loudest dose of musical détente to date.
And I'm really proud that they've all taken their time and effort and this support to help the foundation to bring awareness to kids on drug and alcohol abuse.
Doing something like this on the 20th anniversary of Woodstock.
To start in the right direction, and maybe rock and roll can do what the politicians couldn't.
Just to show people all over the world that Russians can enjoy our music and we can enjoy theirs without any of those political things. And that's the beginning of some peace.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Listening to the wind of change.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history? The East German government said tonight they were going to make more openings in the wall, at least a dozen more.
And I want all Americans to know that I'm committed to attacking our economic problems at home with the same determination we brought to winning the Cold War.
I am ceasing my activities in the post of President of the USSR.
The tricolor banner of the Russian Republic now flies over the Kremlin.
Innocence Abroad, the new world of spyless coups. The key operatives in the conspiracy turned out to be telephones, televisions, and fax machines. We didn't need the CIA to support Yeltsin's counter coup. We just needed a telephone operator listening. The old concept of covert action, which had embarrassed the agency during the past 40 years, was obsolete. And it includes political support operations for pro-democracy activists, which may be best left to the new network of overt operators. That's especially true in the realm of what used to be called propaganda and now can simply be called information. Frank Wisner, the head of the CIA covert operations during the mid-1950s, once remarked that he could play his media assets like a mighty Wurlitzer. Today, the mighty Wurlitzer exists. Mainstream media, like CNN, their objective, omnipresent, real-time coverage of the news helps American interests.
Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
Covert funding for these groups would have been the kiss of death if discovered. Overt funding has been a kiss of life. Who is the director of this operation? The CIA. I mean, CAA. An agency that doesn't exist. Creative Artists Agency. In the same way CIA used Coca-Cola, this is a PSYOP. For the animation work, creator Ken Stewart of CAA hired a visual effects company involved with Hollywood movies. Once again, cultural infiltration.
They managed to construct an entertainment edifice of gigantic proportions, which has changed the way that Hollywood does business.
James Andrew Miller is the author of Powerhouse, the untold story of Hollywood's Creative Artists Agency. If people have never heard of CAA and they don't know this agency, what makes this book exciting?
It's why I did it. There's kind of a paradox of sorts, right? Very few people outside of Hollywood know what CAA is or those initials. And yet, it follows us all day. I mean, they're part of our lives, probably more so than any of us realize, from Game of Thrones to Star Wars.
Ovitz co-founded Creative Artists Agency, a dominating force in the talent agent business. He helped shape the careers of, listen to this roster, Steven Spielberg, Meryl Streep, Bill Murray, and David Letterman. He is also the agent behind classic movies like Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, Schindler's List, and Rain Man. I have to tell you that I am a CAA girl, very, very proud to be represented by the firm.
Going to a Chipotle, CA does their marketing. I mean, you turn on the radio, Katy Perry's there, that's CA. I mean, so I love the idea that there's this little iceberg there. People in Hollywood know it, but below the surface, there's a lot unknown.
Well, the reason I like CAA is because Fred Spector gives the best presents, and he can crush anybody that gets in my way.
And the occasional mental programming.
Michael Ovitz is planning to take over the world. That's his plan. You know, this guy's negotiating. Don't you know they handle everybody on the space shuttle?
However, CAA has endured and come to represent most of the top talent in Hollywood.
Hello, I'm John Lovitz. I'm an actor, but I'm not acting now. Well, happy birthday, CAA. 20 years. Indeed.
In 2011, the overt collaboration of CAA agencies and the CIA became clear with the show Homeland. A political influence operation on cable television.
She's won 2 Emmys and a pair of Golden Globe Awards for her starring role on Homeland, a heart-pounding show which in recent seasons has anticipated real-life events.
If you look through the sort of saw the Paris attack coming, predicted that, a president under congressional investigation, fake news, Russia being involved, all those themes were on your show before they actually happened in real life.
Yeah, it's pretty uncanny.
It's pretty uncanny.
I'm a mad fan for the Homeland. The show's been incredibly prescient in years before. Are there things we're going to learn about America or about our intelligence community 6 months from now that you'll be broadcasting on February 11th? I mean, what is the thing? You can't tell me anything. What am I doing?
I can-ish.
Do you do this every season where you go get to spend some time with some actual spies?
We do. It's like the coolest part of my job.
Who sets that up? Who calls the CIA and goes, we just like to come in and hang out with you guys?
Yeah, so Henry Burmell, who was one of our founding fathers of Homeland, one of our writers, passed away a number of years ago, but his dad was in the CIA, and his cousin was a mentee of his father's and was also in the CIA, a very accomplished person there, and he recently retired.
Who did the cast meet with? Who was writing the script? Henry Burmell, son of a CIA agent. CAA does the casting and promotion, but the Central Intelligence Agency was writing the script of what is to come. Sounds like time traveling to me.
But in his retirement, he curates this week-long spy camp for us producers and writers. And
really?
Yeah.
Is it like, you know?
So we park ourselves in a club in Georgetown and talk to, like, real spooks. And, you know, people in the intelligence community and the State Department and journalists and people who really...
What do they tell you that, like, what's the most surprising thing that they've told you about their jobs or something you would need to know from
Well,
there?
every year it's different, right? We've been at it for a while, and the climate has changed.
Homeland seems to be the enemy telling the world what they're going to do. And the world is watching the movie, unknowing that there are real consequences to the movie they're watching. It's as if they're dictating to all right under your nose what the next phase is. They're telling you their plan out in the open. What's the collateral damage in this war? The collateral damage is the spectator. You.
But this year it was all about, you know, the distrust between the administration and the intelligence world, and the intelligence community was suddenly kind of allying itself with journalists, which usually they're not.
How long ago did you start shooting this season? How long?
We started in late August, September.
Because things didn't really go south between the present real administration and the intelligence community until the fall.
There wasn't great faith at the very beginning, I don't think.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah, the open hostility really started this past fall, I thought.
Yeah, well, I think maybe it wasn't so open, but it was real.
And these people knew about it.
Yeah.
And they told you and you put it into a script.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't so eager to populate the State Department.
Did you hear that? The State Department. The ones that are responsible for foreign affairs. As a reminder, you're paying and even enjoying their communications out in the open. They're mocking you. They have the world in a trance watching the train wreck in slow motion. And the audience is on the train. Pure evil.
I'd like to figure out what I'm going to make jokes about in about 4 months. Could I read any of the scripts that you've got coming up? We'll just save
I don't know.
so
Look,
much time.
I mean, it's not an exact mirror, but it is a riffing on what is happening. It's like a parallel vision.
Probably too irreverently say, Carrie worked for me. Okay, minus the sex, the drugs, and the bipolar thing, but Carrie worked for me. And frankly, that's true.
I'd like to think that what we do on Homeland that's different from what people in the real CIA or in Spy Masters does is that we are trying to give the poetic version. I'm touched by the patriotism of Brennan, who I met, who I went into his office. Why did he bring me in his office? What did he want me to see? Why would he bring you in his office? Why would he allow his cameras in his office? And I believe he wants you to see his humanity.
The hearing to confirm John Brennan as head of the CIA got off to a rocky start. Activists protested against the U.S. drone program, which Brennan helped to create.
It's a thriller based on the true story of CIA agent Tony Mendez, who hatched a plot to free 6 Americans during the 1979 Iran hostage crisis by having them pretend to be a film crew.
And so you think of something that's literally out of Hollywood.
I think of Hollywood because I had some dealings with Hollywood and I trusted them. I knew some really smart people out there.
A little history on the whole 70s Iranian Revolution. Who was part of that revolution? Who instigated it? It was actually Peter Strzok's father and Barack Hussein Obama's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham. Back then, Peter Strzok was raised in Iran.
They're a Canadian film crew for a science fiction movie. I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew.
In order to make this work, you actually have to set up a real production company in Hollywood.
Yeah, we had to find real estate on one of the studios out in Hollywood. Our consultants there helped us find some real estate, and we created a production company that we called Studio 6 Productions. Within a few days, we had a movie script. We had a company. First thing we did is went down to Hollywood Reporter and to Variety and took out full-page ads, which I designed a poster that said, Argo, a cosmic conflagration.
It was when you receive one of the highest decorations in the CIA and then it becomes so clear that you're going to have to keep it secret.
Yep.
No one's going to know.
For 8 years.
And now 30 years later, the whole world knows. How does that feel?
It's a terrible thing. Our job is to keep the secrets, not give them away. We've given it away, haven't we? How are we going to get the genie back in the bottle?
It was the CIA itself that let the genie out. When they celebrated their 50th anniversary, the boss wanted to make a PR splash. Mendez was ordered to go public with the story of the Canadian caper.
I said, why are we going to give away our best secret?
The CIA has a long history of maintaining power, be it dictators or presidents. For the United States, that means ensuring the pre-selected candidate is the commander-in-chief. And if free thinkers go off script, they pull a coup.
So help me God.
Keeping the truth from the people is one of their core functions, like the Bay of Pigs.
The president of a great democracy, such as ours, and the editors of great newspapers, such as yours, owe a common obligation to the people, an obligation to present the facts to present them with candor, and to present them in perspective.
Bad things happen when you try to bring an end to the agency. Public approval was at an all-time low when the Church Committee hearings in the Senate exposed MK-Ultra assassinations and the now infamous heart attack gun. So CIA Director George H.W. Bush went to work to make sure his secrets never got told.
Do you think Congress should have the authority to release secret material?
No, I don't.
Why not?
I don't think that any branch, that the legislative branch of government should unilaterally be empowered to release secret documents. I simply don't feel that way. We cannot run an intelligence business on that kind of basis. And part of it's secret, and I'm going to see that it stays secret.
I mean, the people that were working on the news media was a CIA guy. There were other CIA people involved. And the CIA officers themselves say, you know, we didn't... Church didn't get anything we didn't give him.
At will, to the best of my ability.
A voice for the people had emerged and became very popular with bold ideas.
You know, government in the United States, federal, state, and local, has been growing for 20 years in size about 2.5 times as fast as the increase in population. When you and I were boys back in the Midwest,
right,
governments, federal, state, and local, were only taking about 15 cents out of every dollar earned. Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States.
This Hollywood actor turned president was deemed a problem, and his health deteriorated after he was shot. Reagan's absence was an opportunity for this soon-to-be president, but everyone in intelligence knows within the agency. Bush Sr. was a 3-term president. Clinton's CIA connections trace back to cocaine operations with former President Bush in Arkansas, where Bill was governor. The next president was a CIA director's son and stayed right on script. And the best actor of them all, groomed for decades to be cast for his role in this movie, Barack Hussein Obama.
A 25-year veteran of the CIA, John knows what our national security demands.
It's fitting that the man who made him president should be CIA director, John Owen Brennan, the drone king, and also the guy that personally signed off on the 19 visas for the 19 hijackers of all those planes that hit the United States on 9/11. How do I know? He trained me too.
The newest version of the 2013 NDAA included an interesting amendment. This amendment legalized domestic propaganda on the American public. You heard me right. The newest NDAA wasn't just reauthorizing the indefinite detention of American citizens. It also allowed the U.S. government to legally carry out misinformation campaigns against the citizens of this country. But is this really surprising to anyone? I mean, the corporate media is basically a propaganda arm of the U.S. government anyways, isn't it?
I think Barack Obama has proved feckless and weak. In essence, what the Democratic administration has done is codified the destruction of domestic and international law that was put in place by the Bush administration. I mean, remember, he's not even restored habeas corpus.
The 2016 elections were a massive moment in the war on the people, beginning with the primary elections. Those were fixed too.
I am truly honored to nominate Bernie Sanders for President of the United States.
In an email released by WikiLeaks sent to Tulsi Gabbard in February of 2016, it says, "Representative Gabbard, we were very disappointed to hear that you would resign your position with the DNC so you could endorse Bernie Sanders, a man who has never been a Democrat before. Hillary Clinton will be our party's nominee, and you standing on ceremony to support the sinking Bernie Sanders ship is disrespectful to Hillary Clinton. You have called both myself and Michael Kives before about helping your campaign raise money. We no longer trust your judgment, so we'll not be raising money for your campaign." That email was then forwarded to the Clinton campaign and John Podesta. With the message, hammer dropped. Who were the emails from? Darnell Strom and Michael Kives, both CAA employees and sent from their CAA email accounts.
New NBC News Marist poll numbers from Iowa and New Hampshire bring good and bad news for hopefuls on both sides. Here are 3 key takeaways. Number 1, Democrats are ready for Hillary.
Hillary Clinton, being a former First Lady, has well-established connections to the CIA versus Donald J. Trump, an outsider and a former campaign donor to the Clintons. I wonder why he stopped.
And I led a very nice life, but I also love our country. And this was an easy decision. I went from being the ultimate insider to being an outsider like they've never seen before. We are doing so well. This is a movement like they've never, ever seen before.
From the moment Donald J. Trump rode down the escalator to begin his candidacy, it was no holds barred agency propaganda, smears, and assets coming out of the woodwork to ensure he didn't win.
That's not going to happen.
He's not going to be president. Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. Take it to the bank. Okay. I guarantee it. All right.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red capes.
On that note, Tom.
Take it from me. How about that?
Cheers, Tom.
And then, of course, there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
So when you stand and deliver that State of the Union address, in no part of your mind or brain can you imagine Donald Trump standing up one day and delivering a State of the Union address?
Well, I can imagine it in a Saturday night skit. I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
They wanted to install the pre-selected candidate. In frequent attendance at the Clinton campaign trail were a plethora of CAA talent, between the support of entertainment and even the CAA news talent. The narrative was Clinton would easily win.
The only way we can prove that to you is by having lots of famous people. Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
The CIA has a long history of election interference in foreign countries. And you guessed it. They manipulated these polls, too.
She leads Donald Trump there by 6 points.
And look at all these wins we're projecting for Hillary Clinton right now.
This story had an unexpected plot twist for the agency normally in control. Defying perceptions, Donald J. Trump won the presidency. But this story is far from over. The CIA agency apparatus failed to secure the presidency as they had for decades and took swift action with multiple operations between election and inauguration. Beginning with an urgent update to the NDAA.
Now, of course, when all of us are not paying attention, spending time with our family, exchanging gifts and having dinner, Barack Hussein Obama quietly signed the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act into law. This is a draconian law in its inception and its nature that will have huge ramifications when it comes to independent media and also your free speech.
Propaganda and lies are exactly what they did. All attempts to stall or eliminate his inauguration failed.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee. And you can have the election stolen from you.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do.
We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
I have an objection.
I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference.
There absolutely is a cloud of illegitimacy.
So that legitimacy is in question, yes.
So that was a very tainted election, and in that sense, it's illegitimate.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly
And on January
swear
20th, Donald John Trump became the 45th president.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
The agency doesn't like a president who gives power back to the people. Therefore, the intelligence manufactured influence operation called the Russia Dossier was deployed, attempting to erase the embarrassment and damage that truth, brought to us by WikiLeaks and the Trump election victory, had done to the reputation of the agency apparatus. Let me introduce you to Adam Waldman. His texts reveal how Hollywood was right in the middle of the phony dossier. Most known for being Johnny Depp's lawyer, he was the point of contact between Hollywood, British intelligence operative Christopher Steele, and a staff member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Daniel J. Jones, a Dianne Feinstein staffer who drafted the CIA torture documents and also had a movie produced about him, as played by Adam Driver. His foundation/company funded this dossier.
From a text message conversation between United States Senator from Virginia, Mark Warner, and Hollywood lawyer Adam Waldman. February 16, 2017 at 10:49 p.m., Senator Mark says, "Have had important call about your message. We'll have to answer tomorrow." Adam responds 8 minutes later, "Thank you, standing by. Just want to underscore my opinion and the reason I got involved. This guy is going to do something catastrophic for the Dems, Obama, CIA, and national security. I hope someone will consider getting him to the U.S. to ameliorate the damage."
Who are they talking about?
This guy is going to do something catastrophic for the Dems, Obama, CIA, and national security. 2 months later, on April 10th, 2017, Adam Waldman sends a text to Senator Warner. "Hi, Steele would like to get a bipartisan letter from the committee. Assange, I convinced him to make serious and important concessions, and I am discussing those with DOJ. Deripaska, willing to testify to Congress but interested in state of play with Manafort. I will be with him next Tuesday for a week. I'm bringing Ben Stiller for the Day of Hill and administration meetings on refugee issues in May. Would you like me to bring him by your office?" Senator Mark Warner responds, "Sure." Lawyer Adam Waldman replies over 4 hours later, "Mark, call me anytime you want to discuss the above three. I am glad to communicate or try to accomplish whatever you want to do." 8 days later, on April 18th, 2017, Senator Warner replies, "Been off the grid for a few days. Need to get up with you this week, on phone."
Daniel J. Jones, a month prior to this text, met with Adam Waldman, who was Igor Deripaska's lawyer. And Adam did pro bono work for Julian Assange. These texts highlight how damaging Assange is to the Democrats, to Obama, and the CIA, and how it was very important that they bring him to the United States. And for some reason, Christopher Steele was in the middle of all of that. This is treason. Treason against the people of the United States. Not only that, the Film Actors Guild, Ben Stiller, an envoy to the United Nations, involved in Steele discussions with people on the Hill? Steele and Daniel J. Jones paid Igor Danchenko, an FBI informant who lied, to help manufacture the phony Russian dossier. The George Soros-funded Penn Quarter Group, which was founded by Daniel J. Jones, a former FBI agent who paid Fusion GPS, and author of The Russian Dossier, Christopher Steele. And as you just learned, it's Obama, the CIA, and the politicians that have a problem with Julian Assange, not the people. The influence war continued by the fourth unelected branch of government to reclaim the presidency from a duly elected man who wanted to give power back to the people. All agency assets were deployed, and we witnessed a system-wide attack on a sitting president.
Let me ask you, I don't know if you have seen this. I don't want to blindside you with this. This is the latest statement, latest tweet, as you were just saying. Intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. He's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Rachel Maddow's whole show is this one big conspiracy theory. One big conspiracy theory with no evidence. And she's linked everything to that conspiracy. She said Rex Tillerson, the head of this ex-CEO of Exxon, was a Putin puppet. She said that about him. That's called McCarthyism. That's red baiting.
What they're really upset about is, when was the last time we ever heard a president attack, quote, the deep state, end quote? He's not attacking some rogue outfit in Afghanistan that's an offshoot and maybe under contract. He's attacking the military-industrial complex's core secrecy operations. And that is freaking out people at the CIA, especially career people who have never been fingered that way from the White House.
Now, apparently this was a year before the election. Now, he called it fake news. You know, he always does that. And added information is being illegally given to the failing New York Times and the Washington Post by the Intelligence Committee, NSA, and FBI, just like Russia.
You know, he questioned the integrity of the intelligence agencies. What does he expect? Does he expect them to love him and not leak stuff? Because he started this war with the intelligence agencies, and this is what you're getting now.
So I guess someone over at Super Deluxe Cuts figured this out, and they put this together. Here we go.
Donald Trump's done. He's done. There's no question about that. He's done.
Breaking news.
A bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today was a turning point.
A turning point. We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
The beginning of the end.
And breaking news.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
The call for impeachment.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
The beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. Trump will resign. Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
It was the beginning of the end today.
It's the beginning of the end.
It reminds me a lot of the last days of Nixon.
Breaking news tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The walls closing in.
The walls closing in.
None of these people are embarrassed. None of them are embarrassed. None of them are ridiculed. None of them are called conspiracy theorists. None of them. You know why? Because they're the establishment doing it. But you say one thing against this, they literally, if you debunk this conspiracy theory, they'll literally call you a conspiracy theorist for not buying into this. That's how effed up things are. There's more to this.
Another bombshell.
Bombshell. Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell. This is a bombshell. It is a bombshell.
I am beginning to resent the word bombshell.
Well, I think that the propaganda that batters us all is so, repetitious and monotone, precisely because it is at the service of a kind of single, dominant. Use the word hegemon. I think that's the truth. That's the case,
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Now, the elite media are the agenda-setting media. That means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the major television channels, and so on. They set the general framework. Local media more or less adapt to their structure.
False news has become all too common on social media.
And agenda to control
exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Any rational human being with even minimal history of the United States and the CIA would take everything that the CIA says with a huge grain of salt. I would call it actually a dose of rational skepticism, given how many times in the past that agency has lied and been in error. You know, of course, don't you, that the Iraq War was started because that agency said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and was in an alliance with Al-Qaeda, something that turned out to be tragically untrue.
And I know,
so of course people would treat those claims skeptically.
Okay.
The post 9/11 era opened an opportunity to rehabilitate their image, gain new approval in the public eye. That now they're a force for good. And all that assassination and death squad stuff, well, that's all in the past. Their current rebrand is just the latest phase of this makeover. And in a climate where they now have widespread acceptance in popular culture, academia, and news media. Which is why it's so important to document their true legacy and explore why these operations are not just part of their history, but part of their present.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Hey, Anderson, we had a great interview last time. I was wondering if you get a chance to look into Operation Mockingbird? You know what that is.
You're talking about something, from the 1950s, dude?
1970s, official declassified program, how the CIA infiltrated the mainstream media from the higher up.
Right.
It's declassified.
I read about it in college, yes, I do. Thanks.
Do you think it's something that could possibly be happening today?
I have no comment for you, thanks, dude.
Why not? I mean, you didn't have any journalistic training except CIA training. I mean,
yeah.
I just wanted to know what you think of German reporter Off Otte, who said the CIA bribed him and extorted him to publish news stories.
To manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people working for Central Intelligence Agency or other American agencies.
So Anderson, what influence do you think the CIA has when it comes to mainstream media?
Dude, you're being just ridiculous.
I mean, it's time to ask really the hard question.
And this is not only politicians, this is journalists too. And I just have written in the book how we have betrayed in the past our readers just to push for war, because I don't want this anymore. I'm fed up with this propaganda. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CIA. Why? Because I should be pro-American. I'm fed up with it. I don't want to do it anymore. I've just written a book not to earn money. No, it will cause a lot of trouble for me. to give the people in this country, in Germany, in Europe, and all over the world a glimpse of what goes up behind the closed doors. It is not right what I have done in the past, to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past. And American media tries to bring war to the people in Europe, to bring war to Russia.
The Russian thing is just a big nothing burger.
Really?
Yeah. The Russian thing is just a big nothing burger.
Really?
Yeah.
When we talk about manufacturing of consent, whose consent is being manufactured?
We can, to start with, there are two different groups. We can get into more detail, but at the first level of approximation, there's two targets for propaganda. One is what's sometimes called the political class. Now, their consent is crucial. It's one group that has to be deeply indoctrinated. Then there's maybe 80% of the population whose main function is to follow orders and not to think, and not to pay attention to anything.
The internet has become the most important device for revealing the truth, at least since the beginning of the printing press. It has become the #1 antidote to TV. Democracies are always lied into war. It's not just lies by intelligence analysts, it's lies by the big media machine. And what is in the big media machine? Well, it's the various institutions that get too comfortable and too close to the table of power, the very table that they are meant to be reporting on and policing and getting into the historic record.
And when they can't control the flow of information, and the people embrace their independence and free thinking, it's standard practice to deploy a crisis. Control by fear.
China's new and deadly coronavirus has been reported here in the U.S.
The CDC tonight says the second of what potentially could be a series of coronavirus cases has appeared in the United States. The latest patient, a woman diagnosed in Chicago after returning from Wuhan, China.
It's very likely that rich countries who uniformly throughout their country do a serious shutdown, that they will be able to avoid a high percentage of their population getting infected. That's what the exemplars, like some of the work in China and South Korea, are telling us.
The remarkable rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines offers great hope, but these vaccines need to reach everyone, everywhere as quickly as possible. This is a matter of fairness and justice.
This is the $15 million mansion where Antonio Guterres lives, and you see, he's got two separate UN security cars. These guys are driving in and they're driving out. No masks, man. Check it out. UN car, smoker, no mask.
We need greater trust. For any vaccine to work, the majority of men, women, and children across the globe need to be willing to accept it.
See, this is not quarantine. This is a violation of New York City health regulations.
Turning our attention, Rachel, to young Hollywood and the vaccine.
Oh.
All right, look at this sexy shot, Sophie and Joe.
No surprise, they turned to entertainment to promote this.
Britney Spears and Sam Asghari, her boyfriend.
It was nothing. I felt nothing.
This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
They want obedient world citizens.
Small business, the ones that aren't publicly traded, they're dropping like flies after a government-mandated shutdown because they're non-essential. The people who work there are non-essential. It's hard enough to run a small business. How about when the government says you're closed and the landlord says, I don't care? That's the thing about this pandemic. It's been one of the greatest wealth transfers in history, and it's a wealth transfer that was mandated by the state. I think that it'll have a horrible effect on our country.
The unified world governments decide which businesses get to be open and which ones get shut down. Who can and can't work. This story has come a long way since the CIA fighting the Iron Curtain. They became it. This wasn't a pandemic. This was an infodemic.
With a quote from Winston Churchill, "The farther you look behind, the farther you can see ahead."
The Atlantic Council is an American think tank in the field of international affairs for NATO countries and founded in 1961. On their website, they have an article called Shaping a New Democratic World Order that says, since the end of World War II, the United States and its allies across Europe and the Asia Pacific have led to the establishment of a rules-based order. Sounds like some Winston Churchill world citizen stuff. And this idea is embraced in Ukraine.
We had 3 revolutions in our country when we did not agree with what was going on with the direction of where we're moving in. But right now, it's a critical time because we know that we not only fight for Ukraine, we fight for this new world order for the democratic countries.
And former CIA director, President George H.W. Bush.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There exists a persistent desire for a unified world government. As the Atlantic Council calls it, a democratic world order. But the harsh reality is, the democratic aspect is in name only. You can't be pro-democracy while fixing elections and overthrowing governments in other nations. To understand how the United States and the faceless aspects of the agencies use actors, we start with Sean Penn.
Sean Penn is here. The actor, director, humanitarian, and 2-time Academy Award winner is in New York, having just returned from Haiti. He rushed to that country just days after a devastating earthquake in January killed nearly 300,000 people. He formed an NGO called JP Haiti Relief Organization. Today, Sean Penn is running one of Haiti's largest and most efficient camps.
There's been a lot of tug-of-wars between the government of Haiti and the international aid organizations.
Including the United Nations.
Including the United Nations. That because, for example, USAID, again an organization that has a lot of goodwill in it, it also moves with the political agendas of the United States government. The Préval government was, by any conventional measure, moving forward.
At the time the earthquake struck, this government was getting better.
They don't have control of the money. It's the World Bank, it's the Clinton Foundation. They have the first say over the reconstruction money.
This is a piece about you in the Vanity Fair magazine. To read that, you get a sense that you have access to the levers of power in the U.S. government. You testified before Congress. The military there has been almost partners with you in terms of what you're trying to do. You know people in the State Department at the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State level, and certainly
Sean Penn, a film actor of the new agency. What operations are Hollywood helping with these days? Sean Penn has a string of unique events in his real-life story, including meeting with drug lord El Chapo before his arrest. Also, an assassination operation in Haiti, in which a former driver and security personnel from the JP Haiti Relief Organization days was apprehended as a suspect for this agency coup operation. And now Sean Penn runs CORE, his new nonprofit, where he has continued influence in key locations around the world and funding from those foundations, again, like CAA. This creates the perfect opportunity for Sean Penn to star in a new role in Ukraine, a hotbed of agency activity.
you know that the current president of Ukraine was an actor who played the president of Ukraine on a show that a production company that he himself started created? Did he pull off the biggest psyop of all time?
As someone who worked in intelligence, it's exhilarating to see people wake up and get it. This is an influence operation, a psyop. Having participated in fixing elections, specifically in the Ukraine, here's what they did. They took an actor from a popular TV show called Servant of the People, used to reality hack the population into accepting him as a legitimate candidate. That was effective. Politicians are actors too. In 2014, Ukraine had a revolution just like the many CIA coup operations of the past. This one has all the same signs.
Осуществляется проект Техком, в рамках которого ведется подготовка к разжиганию гражданской войны на Украине.
So, before the coup, the U.S. State Department was involved to have their influence on the outcome of the election.
The highest-ranking State Department official, who presumably represents the Obama administration, and the American ambassador in Kiev are, to put it in blunt terms, plotting a coup d'etat against the elected president of Ukraine.
The most blatant coup in history, because it was advertised 2.5 weeks in advance on YouTube.
We could land jelly side up on this one if we move fast. So let me work on Klitschko.
So on that piece, Jeff, when I wrote the note, Sullivan's come back to me, VFR, saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick. So okay. Biden's willing.
Okay, great.
They even got a Netflix deal, another Hollywood wartime production. Zelensky was presented on the show as a low-income teacher. But in reality, he's a wealthy businessman connected to Igor Kolomoisky, a billionaire Ukrainian oligarch.
We'd visited Zelensky's campaign headquarters. It has all the feel of a tech startup. But the man himself gives very few interviews.
Every time Zelensky speaks Russian, the crowd here start to boo and to say shame. He does look as though he's struggling more than Petro Poroshenko. And even though Zelensky called this debate, the Poroshenko side of the stadium is quite a lot more full than the Zelensky side.
The popularity of the show, and then renaming a political party the same name, succeeded in convincing the people that a stolen election was a legitimate one. Agency coups are bloodless takeovers of nations when they can rig your elections. It was Joe Biden who needed this outcome the most. He couldn't run for president in the USA if criminal corruption was exposed in Ukraine. I even warned about it on Twitter. In 2020, I heard the conversation at the cyber conference in Munich, February 2019. They know why Joe is slow to run for office. I heard it all, but then Twitter deleted my account.
Eat my shorts.
How will Biden change the 2020 race?
He has never run a major campaign where he is the front runner from the start, right? He was Barack Obama's running mate twice, but that's a supporting role. So now he's the starring actor in this campaign.
You overthrew Ukraine in 2014! You overthrew the legitimate Ukraine in 2014!
The 2014 Ukraine elections had events that repeated during the 2020 U.S. elections. An article by Christian Science Monitor on the Ukraine election preserves the record. They say, in the wee hours of the morning after polls closed, as results flowed in from Ukrainian election districts, internet links feeding that data to the vote tally system were hit with a barrage of fake data packets. From about 1 to 3 a.m. on May 26th, election results were blocked. delaying the final tally until early morning. A preliminary report by international election observers recounted. Wait, they stopped counting in the middle of the night? Sound familiar?
6 counties, by the way, I think it's 7 total, that have said they will not count mail ballots tonight. And all those counties were won easily by Donald Trump in 2016.
It's also worth noting that the Obama administration sent $50 million to Ukraine in the form of aid to help ensure democratic elections. Remarkable timing 1 month before elections were held.
Of the United States, we're looking at $53 million in further assistance, crucial.
I put this in my 2020 election affidavit. It's over 30 pages, and to date, no one has disproved it.
After 4 long, tense days, we've reached a historic moment in this election. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States. We're able to make this projection because CNN projects Biden wins Pennsylvania.
The 2020 election was a blatant theft by the agencies with a criminal cover-up.
They're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning.
The stolen power from the people by the fourth unelected branch of government allowed for the agencies to steal back the presidency. But the 4 years of Trump in office was enough to give the people time to understand how to take back their republic of self-government.
Proud of what we have achieved together.
When you're a global power broker and you can seize the White House,
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
It's a large return on investment. Thanks to the Hunter Biden laptop that was intentionally left behind, we learned how Joe used Hunter in almost a conservatorship type way to maximize the cash out. While keeping his son poor, he made his dad millions. Also, German email server used by both Joe and Barack Obama to avoid U.S. surveillance. First, an internship for Naomi Biden with her own CAA email address. Then there's Hunter coordinating speaking contracts for his father. Joe Biden himself was signed on with CAA. And the news that Joe sealed a China deal for Hollywood and CAA, courtesy of the Biden family business dealings. These connections with China run deep, both for the Bidens and Hollywood. But don't worry, all this is fake news, according to the 50 spies who lied. You know, former agency. And last of all, from the Hunter Biden laptop, is Obama and CAA organizing an event for women. Another foundation/nonprofit to psyop the people. Kind of like the CIA did in its early days of cultural infiltration. The United States of America, the fourth unelected branch of government, consumed more and more tax dollars.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash. One of the things that President I will do is to make sure your money is spent wisely.
And became a massive runaway agency apparatus who passed laws subverting U.S. constitutional law. Like the 2001 Patriot Act.
The bulk collection of all Americans' phone records, all of the time, is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. The Second Appeals Court has ruled it illegal. The president began this program by executive order. He should immediately end it through executive order.
This is a coalition of classified, public, and privatized assets with the power to overthrow governments, including their own. And with that much captured authority, they were allowed to get away with a lot, from Hollywood to around the world.
WikiLeaks released what it claims are thousands of confidential CIA documents. They allegedly show that the spy agency worked to develop tools to hack into devices like Apple and Android smartphones, Samsung TVs, and vehicle control systems.
To WikiLeaks, the hacking tools included malware and viruses designed to attack Apple's iOS, Google Android, and Microsoft Windows. They allegedly allowed the CIA to access a smartphone user's location and messages, as well as control a phone's microphone and camera.
It's actually a totalitarian process that's been used down through history. I mean, that's what totalitarian dictators, states, that's what they want to do. They want to know everything about the population so they can control it. That was the idea behind the Soviet Union, the East German Stasi, that was their idea, and the Gestapo and the SS, and down through history, many others.
CISA facilitates and expands surveillance. It would allow companies to openly share your emails, phone calls, text messages, credit cards, social security information, anything with Homeland Security. And then Homeland Security curates it and immediately shares it to government agencies like the Department of Defense, the FBI, and of course, the NSA. It could also share that info with other companies if they think it poses any kind of cybersecurity threat.
Fire Department 97, what's the address of the emergency?
Oh, somebody's passed out.
Somebody what?
My daughter's passed out.
The lab which conducted the test suggested one possible explanation would be an exposure to these metals or toxins administered by a third-party perpetrator with likely criminal intent.
Brittany was named as an official witness in our case that was at the time proceeding against Homeland Security. So you can imagine what would happen if Brittany was to walk through the doors to testify in our case. There would be a lot of media.
Angelo, do you suspect somebody responsible for poisoning her?
Yeah, I do really, but I'd rather not speak about that.
Brittany did tell me she was under surveillance, and incidentally, so was I.
Do you have any advice for a young girl moving to Hollywood?
I'll get lively with us. Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party in the Four Seasons downtown.
You know, this is not unique. This goes on at the most horrendous high levels.
I want to know who is taking these actresses up to his room. And I'd like to know if people say they had a story, that reporters say they had a story and didn't run it. I'd like to know why they didn't tell the story in the last 10 years.
You mean the CIA talent in Mockingbird CIA News didn't report on this? Just another day in Hollywood.
I would have liked to have known this. You know, that this man was assaulting women and was silencing women.
Harvey, why'd you hire Black Q?
For days like this.
For people in positions of power in large corporations, the tools and operations developed by government intelligence agencies have become available to the private sector. Spies, covert and private investigators, standard agency actions from governments around the world available to those who can afford it.
I don't think most people are aware of the exotic and extreme tools at the disposal of the most powerful and wealthy men in America when they are bent at silencing accusations against them.
Courtney Love tweeted Saturday saying, although I wasn't one of his victims, I was eternally banned by CAA for speaking out against Harvey Weinstein.
Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, no legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him.
We've seen the same thing happen with Epstein with these scientists that we saw happen in Hollywood and we saw happen up on Wall Street in New York, where he starts spreading money around.
The scientist who's funded by Jeffrey Epstein is creating these interactive dolls that go into the bedroom of some little girl that records what she's saying, watches what she's doing, feeds this information back to some system somewhere, some mainframe. The fact that Epstein's behind it, you have to ask, what was the plan?
Okay, wow, that just kind of scared me as well as give it up for little Sophia, everybody. Bye-bye. I love that.
And my guess is it represents some very powerful structure that we tripped over, that this was constructed. I mean, we have a very famous case of a guy named Eli Cohen, who was fitted with a backstory and became a playboy in Damascus and held orgies, if I understand correctly, where he collected information and leverage against people in the Syrian government. If you take that situation, this looks remarkably similar. We've got a guy who was apparently a math teacher at a private high school, and the next thing we know, he's avoided jail in some sort of financial scandal, and he's suddenly set up as a mystery financier with connections to absolutely everyone in the top echelons of power.
I know that Jeffrey was selling arms.
How do you know that?
Where the money comes from, nobody knows. If you want to get somebody in the show, you'll never get them, but Leslie Wexner, the fellow who owned The Limited and Victoria's Secret, and was very involved with Epstein in terms of business, as much as we know.
Okay, so he would know. He would know where.
He knows some stuff. I mean, he had something to do with Epstein getting that 28,000 square foot apartment,
okay.
Which I don't know. It seemed like Epstein never paid for it. How could we, since 2006, not pay any attention to the story?
When I met Jeffrey Epstein, which might have been something like 2002, before he was charged with sex crime violations in Florida, it was like somebody created a Gatsby-like character out of a Ralph Lauren look-alike who had apparently recently been a math teacher at a private high school. Nothing added up. I did not believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a hedge fund manager. And I, in fact, called my wife at the time and I said, this man appears to be a construct. And she said, what do you mean by a construct? And I said, it's like they've hired an actor to play a hedge fund manager.
We did hear that today, apparently, President Trump had some sort of falling out with Epstein, but he didn't elaborate. We do know that he did kick him out of Mar-a-Lago at one point. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there are two incidents there. One was apparently there was a member and Epstein was inappropriate with the member's daughter. The other piece, and I interviewed a woman who would run the spa there, and I said, did you know Jeffrey Epstein? She said, oh, yes. She said, he used to come over to the spa, and I found him to be inappropriate with the girls, the young girls there. And she said, I went to Mr. Trump, and he threw him right out.
Epstein used blackmail to manipulate people. Maintaining a control file is a very old trick of the agencies and still used today. French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel has started agencies with Epstein, and both share a long history.
It's a me, Marcus. You are there for the purpose of somebody wanting to take you home to bed. He's got the agency, he's got the girls. His friends say, oh, Jean-Luc, I'd like to meet some girls, or we're having a party tonight. Can you bring some girls?
And what happens if you say no?
You don't work.
You actually have known that he has made someone pay a professional penalty for saying no.
I know, I paid a penalty for saying no.
But his usefulness eventually came to an end. Epstein and Jean-Luc both died in prison by suicide, allegedly. Defeating the USSR, we thought we escaped controlling how people think. But Hollywood eventually became what it was used to fight against, controlling how people think. The massive network of collusion will surprise you.
Well, the industry is severely compromised by its own politics, and that's why there's nothing good or original on any of it. So, we're living under censorship, and it's politically based. And I think the networks, particularly the one I work for, the head of my network in his interview, Bob Iger, said the first phone call he made about my gaffe on Twitter was to Valerie Jarrett. It's all a Jussie Smollett world in TV and in entertainment, and it's all controlled, and they just use it to hate everybody so they can raise funds. It's just all a big scam from top to bottom. It's all a Jussie Smollett world.
They guide your thoughts. Division is their goal. And as long as we're occupied fighting against each other, we can't see what they're doing.
Jussie Smollett convicted on 5 of the 6 counts he was facing after being accused of staging a hate crime.
A fake hate crime to pass a lynching bill.
The idea that we would not be taking the issue of lynching seriously is an insult. An insult to Senator Booker, to Senator Tim Scott, and myself, and all of the senators, past and present, who have understood this is part of the great stain of America's history. Mr. President, in 2018, the Senate unanimously passed bipartisan anti-lynching legislation, which I proudly introduced with the only other black members of this body, Senator Cory Booker and Senator Tim Scott. It was a historic moment. It marked the first time in the history of our country that federal anti-lynching legislation had been passed by the United States Senate. It passed again by unanimous consent in 2019. This is Obama, y'all.
And nobody in this body needs a lecture on lynching and how horrible it is.
I used to always tell reporters when they would try to stir up trouble between our camps, I would say, wait a minute, Kamala is my sister and there's some sibling rivalry, but don't let it be mistaken. In the end, she will always be family.
But this publicity stunt was a scar that Chicago didn't earn and certainly didn't deserve. To make things worse, the accusations within this phony attack received national attention for weeks. Celebrities, news commentators, and even presidential candidates weighed in on something that was choreographed by an actor.
Manufacturing evidence, fake tweets, fake texts, fake conversations, which would be a crime if any of us presented them in a court of law. But they get to do it.
Special Prosecutor Dan Webb says Kim Foxx in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office may have violated legal ethics by abusing its discretion. Foxx's office initially charged the actor with 16 counts and then, in an unannounced hearing, dropped the case.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like
and I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki confirms that 5 White House staffers are no longer employed for their previous marijuana use.
NXIVM, having been exposed for running a sex cult with human trafficking and domestic slavery, reveals the dark side of Hollywood. With a lengthy list of actresses being involved and charged with crimes. It was also discovered that members were asked to donate to Hillary Clinton while also being paid back in order to bypass campaign donation limits on behalf of Claire Bronfman, who pled guilty for her involvement. These are campaign finance violations. Her father has a long history with the Clinton family and even received the Medal of Freedom from Bill Clinton. The coalition of Hollywood and the Democrat Party is crystal clear. And NXIVM even funded a children's program called the Rainbow Cultural Garden. Our youth are the most susceptible, and CAA influences children. Their foundation funds STEM, Teach America, Black Lives Matter, and the Sunrise Movement, supported by Democrats. They remind me of a 60s and 70s youth movement.
Yeah, they are. We're not looking at it from a place of, can we do this? Are we the right people? Is this the right time? Like, we have no other choice.
My state cannot lose here. It is life or death for Kentucky right now.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created.
Weathermen are the militant faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Only one of the 13 is now in custody.
This system is going to be overthrown. It's going to mean a fight. And it's going to mean a lot of white people risking a lot of things when they finally join on the side of the black people and the people of Vietnam and around the world who have already begun the fight.
We are making them face us. We are making them see the future. And we are making this issue an unavoidable political priority in this country. And you are a part of that.
That group, the Sunrise Movement, has public school teachers recruiting in the classroom from as young as middle school age. And it's an organization that motivates students to break laws. In order to get their agents of change into positions quicker, Teach America has an expedited process to get new teachers into the classrooms faster, where they influence the minds of young children. In other words, reality hacking, resulting in some classrooms functioning as indoctrination centers for the New World Order, supported by the Democrat and Republican parties. In the same way, the USSR demanded everyone conform to one way of thinking. This targeting of susceptible youth has the same goal.
Standing here at the center of our nation's power, I can think only of everyone who's been made to feel powerless by their abusers, by a system that failed to protect them. Anyone who's been in those situations will tell you just how far they feel from the power concentrated here in this building. The power to pass laws that might have prevented their pain in the first place. The idea of sovereignty of a family home is being used to abuse the members within it.
Wait, they want to end sovereignty of the home? Take away parents' rights? So the hidden objective of this actor is to give the government more rights over children. BuzzFeed releases a decades-long investigation into CIA sex crimes. Over the past 14 years, the Central Intelligence Agency has secretly amassed credible evidence that at least 10 of its employees and contractors committed sexual crimes involving children. Only one of the individuals was ever charged with a crime because the agency wanted to protect its sources and methods.
Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure and all this culture of racism and sexism and classism and genderism and all of it in place. They continually feed it, and they make a lot of money doing it. And they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything.
An overt operation, but overlooked until recently, is Davos World Economic Forum. Unifying political power, nonprofits, and corporations with ideas of world citizens who own nothing and they will be happy.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high-tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
That's transhumanism, the merging of humans with computers and machines for global control nonetheless. But did anyone vote for this?
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
biological knowledge multiplied by computing power, multiplied by data, equals the ability to hack humans. A system that understands us better than we understand ourselves can predict our feelings and decisions, can manipulate our feelings and decisions, and can ultimately make decisions for us. Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough, and nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon,
the agencies have been hacking human minds for decades.
At least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We are now hackable animals.
Not only psychologically hacking humans, they're hacking biologically too.
In different corners of the globe, pioneering scientists use completely different ways of turning the coronavirus into a vaccine.
We're aiming to have something that's ready to go into humans in 16 weeks' time.
The shape of the coronavirus spike protein before the virus meets our cells is what triggers the most protective antibody response. So Keith must make the spike protein in the lab, locking it into exactly the same shape by adding another protein that acts a bit like a clamp. And that protein is a tiny fragment of HIV.
Is a tiny fragment of HIV.
Yesterday, Moderna began clinical trials for an HIV vaccine. It developed the shot with the nonprofit International AIDS Vaccine Initiative. Like the COVID vaccine, it uses mRNA technology to teach our cells how to fight HIV.
When you see it all, the world seems a mess and growing dark. It's natural to turn to the election of politicians and civic leaders to help lead us out of a crisis. But the sad reality is the agency and the global alliance decides who gets to run and who gets to debate.
Now to an extraordinary development in the presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton, the 2016 nominee, called Tulsi Gabbard, one of the current candidates, quote, the favorite of the Russians.
On a podcast interview, Clinton said, quote, they're grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far.
Presidential hopeful Tulsi Gabbard addressing a defamation lawsuit filed today against Hillary Clinton, seeking $50 million after lawyers for Gabbard say she suffered actual significant and professional damages.
I will not stand by and allow Hillary Clinton or anyone else to smear me as a traitor to the country that I love. So the lawsuit that I filed is to hold her accountable for those defamatory statements that she made.
The only woman candidate left in the race, the only woman of color, and the first female combat veteran ever to run for the presidency has a voice. The DNC and their corporate media partners say, no thanks.
As of now, the criteria doesn't work. You're not going to be there.
Which, by the way, they just changed it. They just changed it.
They have changed it throughout the race. It would seem at times to include people.
So after Super Tuesday, based on the qualifications, I would have been on the debate stage, and then they changed it.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations, trying to capture the diversity of background, of experience of the American electorate, the people that aren't currently represented in office. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
My brother told me that he had sent my nomination in the summer, but I was like literally working out of a restaurant, and I was like, there's no way.
A casting call. They had a casting call. They cast Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the role of Congresswoman. And they did this so they could promote their own agenda.
Bring in people in a nominating process, and then they would go over their resume and hire them in the same way that you would hire an actress, right? And the idea was that they write the script, and these congressmen read the script, right? And they talk about this in their video. They say, well, you didn't have any interest in running for office before us, right? And she's like, no.
You hadn't thought about running for office or anything at that point, right?
No.
The people who voted for AOC didn't know that she was just parroting, some writer's script.
What was shocking, and it explained her. It totally explained her. How she was saying exactly what Justice Democrats were saying 4 years before. She obviously got the script.
Politicians are actors too, working for special interests or whatever agency cast them, and they stick to the script. This is more common and has been happening for a lot longer than people realize. From a 1990 article on political party recruitment, citing a 1985 survey of county party leaders across the United States, found that 62% of Democratic leaders and 64% of Republican leaders claimed that their organizations were very or somewhat involved in the recruitment of congressional candidates. Also finding that Republican recruitment efforts were substantially increased in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Politicians for many decades have been cast in their roles and expected to stay on script. Do these representatives work for the voters? Or do they work for political parties who selected them and the corporations who fund their election and re-election? Our government system has long lost being of, by, and for the people. Working in the intelligence agencies, you learn to protect information with disinformation, hiding facts and truths from enemies, and letting them see lies to decoy them. Covering the intelligence community is mosaic. It's a puzzle. You protect each piece because you don't know what piece someone else is missing.
You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Truth is the answer to the deceptions. To overcome the psyops and reality hacking, a human cannot be deprogrammed with direct information. They have to draw direct information themselves to break the spell. Stand on the moon and look back to see the big picture. The subversion of the Constitution of the United States of America through the networks of power that exist. The fourth unelected branch of government. Take ownership of your nation. Research them. The networks of funding. Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, world controlling groups, the media empire, ABC, CNN, CBS, Fox News, NBC, entertainment, sports, military generals, CIA assets, propaganda. It's all a big show. A manufacturing of consent. A psychological operation. Everything you have been presented has hacked your reality. You need to own the knowledge and information yourself. You must do the work of research and establish facts for yourself. How do you destroy a tank? From the inside.
As citizens of the United States in the second half of this century, we are learning to live with some uncomfortable realities. We live in a sort of ethical coexistence. We have created another weapons system of secret and subversive action. This, too, given the state of the world, may have been inevitable. The CIA, it is on active duty in a constant, secret, dirty war.
It's digging a big, deep hole for the United States, and the sad thing is that the CIA is an unconstitutional, an extra-constitutional organization. It functions illegally.
More or less following the tactics that we
associated with the Communist Party.
1,000 Pieces is a reference to JFK when he said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces after the Bay of Pigs fiasco.
It's not even like, it's like not 3D, it's like a flat wall. The door is painted on. It almost looked like a Hollywood set.
It's the Hollywood-Washington connection.
The people who voted for AOC didn't know that she was just parroting, some writer's script.
It's like they've hired an actor to play a hedge fund manager.
I was eternally banned by CAA for speaking out against Harvey Weinstein.
Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure, and they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything.
Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States.
The problem we have is how to reconcile the necessity of the CIA with its secret offenses against our public morality.
I think probably Hollywood is full of CIA agents, and we just don't know it.
The most important question to ask yourself is, who decides your future?
There's no line between the two?
No, Justice Scalia, I would say there
Agencies and their actors, or you? Behold the theater of war, where all the world's a stage. It's time to stand up. We are the news now. The power of the pen is in your hands. Run non-compromised, non-corporate funded candidates for office. It's time to take back our power. Rescue our captured constitutional freedoms in this unknown war. This invisible war on the people. From agencies, reality hacking through your culture. It's decision time. Spectator or participant? You choose. In the meantime, enjoy the show.
Mirror, mirror, I could see clearer. It was all a movie. We was in the theater. They was just acting. We was just clapping. I wrote it on a napkin and then I started rapping. They wanted me to follow the leader. I told them that I'm faster than a cheetah. And I could spot bullshit a mile away. They decoding the code and I got to pay. It's my lucky day, I guess. And the check is on his chest. I'm expecting nothing less. Cause a lot of people follow them. Titled and tiara them. Shout out the OG for lines that I'm borrowing. Mirror, mirror, I could see clearer. It was all a movie. We was in the theater. They was just acting. We was just clapping. I wrote it on a napkin and then I started rapping. Put them on blast. The crumbs follow the cash. The funds is on smash. The first shall be last. So all of that shit that y'all spit is just trash. We the type that driving them cars with no mask. Get your life right and watch who you follow. You could be bigger than the Instagram model. And you can start everything brand new tomorrow. 12 noon, we letting the genie out of the bottle. And we ain't got no tax money for you to borrow. You hid it in that airport art in Colorado. Why the hell we never went back after Apollo? I guess we gotta wait for the drops from Mar-a-Lago. Mirror, mirror, I could see clearer. It was all a movie. We was in the theater. They was just acting. We was just clapping. I wrote it on the napkin and then I started rapping. Did I mention I pray for your soul to get redemption? Some was unknowing, just trying to get some attention. Now they gotta stay after school, they got detention. The rest of them trolls is gone, they got suspension. Coach tried to give them some time, gave an extension. Looking all the way from the moon to this dimension. Model X Tesla with smart air suspension. Disappoint state to state with no engine. In mirror, mirror, I could see clearer. It was all a movie. We was in the theater. They was just acting. We was just clapping. I wrote it on a napkin and then I started rapping. Mirror, mirror, I could see clearer. It was all a movie. We was in the theater. They was just acting. We was just clapping. I wrote it on a napkin and then I started rapping. Wake up call, she had to wake up, y'all. Face off, came with no makeup on. Movie night, we gotta throw Jacob on. Timeline change when the Matrix on. Gotta unplug, we await the storm. And the bees in the hive, they gon' hate the swarm. Cause the frequency high and it ain't the norm. We downhill, so emergency brakes is on.
ones for free.
Over a year ago, I did a show about Britney Spears and brought into the light the issues that she had. I mentioned to many people, conservatorship is a real thing, but not just in Hollywood. Conservatorship works by having handlers. Now you just watched Enjoy the Show. Can you see who's handling your government? Well, at least the agency responsible for that. Let that percolate for a bit.